rich, you would look at all the riches of the earth and say, you know what? Something is wrong here. I need to go back to the Father who at one point gave my parents and my foreparents all these things. How you feel when you can't pay your rent? You can't do certain things. You can't even rub two nickels together. You can't even do anything. But then you look at the rich, the rich governments of the earth, who can let me tell you, they can operate in the earth without touching the ground. They can fly in great helicopters from one place to the next. They run around with the best cars, the best of everything. There's an imbalance there. But Paul is letting you know why it's so. He gave the nations all the riches and powers to provoke Israel to anger so that we can come back to the Father that took those resources from us. Go ahead.
Well, if that's the case, all these other nations, they're not giving him the glory or the praise or whatever.
Yeah.
They, so
they don't have to, though. It's theirs by default. They would not have received those things if we would have kept to the Most High's law. It's theirs by default. And now you have these obstacles that are placed systematically in the way in our society to stop us from ever obtaining this as a nation. Again, like I said, we can, if we're willing to sell our people out, you can get it as an individual. If you're willing to sell out and be a part of oppressing thousands, you can get some wealth for your personal family. But as a nation, it will never happen. It's systematic. And it's what we're reading right here. We will never come back as a nation with wealth and power until Christ brings it. Period. It's systematic. It's in place. I don't care how much you're talking about financial empowerment, fiscal empowerment, family empowerment. We can talk all the stuff we want. But we can only go but so far based on this curse. Unless you're willing to join the other side. Yes.
They need us to leave off.
Huh?
They need to leave off us.
Yeah, they need us because we are what we are the what you would call we're the workforce. We are the force they're feeding on. We are the spiritual source that keeps things going. Without the spiritual prayer of Israel, the Most High would have been destroyed all this. So they need our prayers, they need our spirituality, they need us to be the force they work on top of. But they need us only at that capacity. You understand? We're not to rise and to want more than what we can achieve in this little bubble we've been placed in. That's it.
Yeah, because that's what I've noticed in society. If we weren't there, they'd have nothing to feed on.
Exactly. Yeah.
People don't realize.
Yes. And that's the children of Israel throughout the four corners of the earth. We are needed in society, but as a nation, we cannot use all our talents for ourselves. It's impossible. Corporations are set up to feed off of all the nations in the earth, to fuel Satan's empire. And if we decided that we wanted to be a part of something separate, it would totally change the whole game. Yes?
The sister's question, correct me if I'm wrong too.
Go ahead.
How, they weren't given the laws and the statutes and commandments to follow.
Yeah.
When you were asking, how can they then have the riches and carry on?
Yes.
There was a punishment for it.
Yes. The laws wasn't given to the nations. So they didn't get it because they followed the Most High. Believe it or not, they're able to relish in riches because they are totally on the left side. They're dealing directly with Satan. So through our fall, riches have come to the Gentiles, and all the resources in the earth are being controlled by the principalities and powers of the air. And in order for you to play his game, you must sell your soul. That's how it works. Let's go back to the verses. Come on.
Romans chapter 11, verse 14. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh.
So this was done to provoke to emulation the Israelites who were in the church and Israel as a whole. Paul is explaining why Israel fell as a people and what is the result of their fall. Read.
And might save some of them.
So he did this so he might save some of them. That Israel may look at the earth and say, you know what? I'm supposed to have that. And come back to the Father to receive it. That's why it was done. Read.
Verse 15. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world.
So if the casting away of the children of Israel allowed the whole world to be reconciled and receive all these riches and powers, read.
What shall the receiving of them be, but life from the dead?
It says, what would the receiving of my people be? It's going to be like life from the dead. Like we read in Ezekiel 37, the valley of the dry bones. It's going to be like someone came back from the grave. How much more will I receive my people if I can give all the earth these riches and power and salvation? Read.
Verse 16. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy.
That means if the first fruit be holy, everything came out of the first fruit is holy. You cannot say you stake claim to Abraham and want to reject Abraham's people. Because if Abraham is holy, the lump came out of him is holy too. Read.
And if the root be holy, so are the branches.
If the root be holy, which was Abraham, so are the 12 branches that sprang out of the tree. So now you can't say that I'm down with the root and I'm down with Abraham, but yet you will reject the branches that are a result from the root that was planted. And see, and that's what's going on in religion today. In Christianity, they want to stake claim to the promises of Abraham through Christ, but they want to reject the branches that came from the root. Same thing as Islam today. They want to stake claim to Abraham through Ishmael, but they want to reject Isaac and Jacob in the root that came from Abraham. So this is what Paul is showing here. So if you're going to accept the root, it behooves you to have respect and figure out where the branches are. Right? Read.
Verse 17. And if some of the branches be broken off.
And some of the branches were broken off, the northern kingdom. When the kingdom was split under Solomon. If some of the branches be cut off, read.
And thou, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them.
So he said, you nations, you Gentiles, who are not Israelites, you are a wild olive tree that was grafted in to this root. You came in contrary to nature, because usually you can't take something else and add it to a tree. Read.
And with them partakers of the root and fatness.
So now you came in through Christ, and you have now partakers of all the root and the fatness that was originally promised to Abraham. This is what Paul tells the Gentiles now. Read.
And with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree.
So you will partake of all the fatness and riches and glory that was promised to Abraham in Genesis. Read.
Verse 18. Boast not against the branches.
But he told the Gentiles, now that you've been grafted in, you better not boast against those people that were there before you. You better not boast against the natural branches. Now, the example we give of the institutions boasting is putting up this guy to be Jesus Christ. That's one of the biggest boasters. That was a boast. Or here's a boast that's actually embedded into Christian dogma or Christian doctrine. That the Israelites are cut off so that the other people can now become God's people. This is what Paul was warning the churches from during his ministry. Read that part again.
Verse 18.
Read it.
Boast not against the branches.
It says, boast not against the branches. They were not to boast against the branches of the tree, which are the 12 tribes of Israel. Read.
But if thou boast, thou bearest not the root.
Because if you boast, Gentile, you're not boasting of your root or your history. You're boasting about theirs. How can you boast when you're in their history now? You've become a part of their promise. Because now you're boasting, you're not going to be boasting about your root. You're boasting about their root. And that boast is like having Charleston Heston part the Red Sea. That's a boast. That is a boast. Hold up. You're not boasting about your root. You're boasting about these people's roots. There's no place on earth which shows the people of Alexander the Greek or whatever was able to part the Red Sea during the time of the Egyptians. That's boasting. And that's institutionalized boasting. Now, on a individual level, that like Paul is teaching here, it's when you would have us teach amongst ourselves that it's not about God's people anymore. It's about us and all people. Or when some people say, well, it doesn't matter if you're Israel. It doesn't matter anymore. That's the boast Paul was warning people against. Read it again. Read that last part.
Romans 11 and 18.
Read.
Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee.
And what is the boast? Read it.
Verse 19. Thou wilt say then,
Thou wilt teach in your doctrine that what?
the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in.
You are now teaching in doctrine that the Israelites are done away with so that you can be included. So that it's about you now. So you're telling me to forget who we are and accept you as the people. That's the boast Paul was warning the Gentiles against. And he started off with the first verse saying, I say then, if God cast away his people, God forbid. For I am also an Israelite from the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God hath not cast away his people which he foreknew. So the boast is indoctrinated in our everyday learning in the churches today. That's nothing gets me more riled up out there when we're speaking to the people than someone coming to me telling me it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. The whole earth is in the state it's in right now because we've taken that stance as people. We focus on things that don't matter. And the things that do matter, we say it don't. We totally ignore. It does matter. Or Paul wouldn't have wrote this stipulation. What is the boast? Read it again, the 19th verse.
Verse 19. Thou wilt say then,
Here's the boast.
the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in.
You will teach in your doctrine that the Israelites are done away with. That there's no more Israelites. It's about all of us now. That's wrong. Because Paul even taught to the Jews first and then the Gentiles. Yes, it's all inclusive, but there's order. You just can't exclude a people altogether, but yet use the same people's book to teach salvation and understanding. That's backwards. The example I give all the time is like, okay, you have a Chinese book, and I'm going to come from North Philadelphia into Chinese with a Chinese book and tell them with their Chinese book that it's not about them anymore, and that I'm the new